The laughter echoed through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Council's judgment chamber, a sound that would have shattered human eardrums if not for the atmospheric dampeners. Commander Varric stood barely 4 feet tall among the towering shade. Representatives of a dozen species, his compact frame dwarfed by the massive Goliathan delegate, whose boulder-like shoulders shook with mirth. This is what Terra sends us. The Goliathan's voice rumbled like grinding stone. A creature so small, it could nest in my palm. The ethereal Empress Nixandra glided forward, her serpentine form coiling 20 feet into the air, bioluminescent, patterns pulsing along her translucent skin in what Varric recognized as barely contained amusement. Her species had conquered 17 star systems through sheer physical dominance, their warriors standing twice the height of any human and possessing strength that could crush starship hulls. The humans claim they deserve a seat among the apex. Predators of the galaxy, she hissed, her voice carrying the melodic deadliness of a siren. Yet they send us this diminutive specimen. Varric remained motionless, his expression neutral as the assembly continued their ridicule. The crystalline Overmind's representative chimed in with harmonics that translated to mockery. While the Hive Queen's drones buzzed in synchronized derision, each species present had earned their council seats through displays of overwhelming physical prowess, territorial conquest, or technological superiority that demanded respect through fear. Your species conquered nothing through strength, Nixandra continued, her luminous eyes fixed on Varric. Your worlds were gifted to you. By chance, your survival, a mere accident of evolution? What right do you have to stand among titans? The human commander finally spoke, his voice carrying across the chamber with surprising authority despite his stature. The right of results? Results?
Oh.
The Empress's laugh was like crystal bells shattering. What results could your kind possibly achieve? You lack the size for dominance, the natural weapons for conquest, the psychic abilities for manipulation. You are prey animals pretending to be predators. Varric stepped forward, and despite his small frame, something in his movement caused the nearest delegates to unconsciously shift backward. My species doesn't need size to be dangerous, Empress. We've learned to make our limitations into weapons. Weapons? The Goliathan delegate leaned down, his massive face mere inches from Varric's position. What weapon could someone your size possibly wield against beings like us? Intelligence, Varric replied simply. The chamber erupted in renewed laughter. But Varric noticed that Nixandra's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to a different configuration. Curiosity, perhaps? Or the first stirrings of unease? Intelligence is a tool, she said, her voice carrying a note of challenge. Tools are only as effective as the hand that wields them. Your hands are too small, human. Varric smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Perhaps you'd like to test that theory, Empress. Your species values trial by combat, does it not? Physical dominance proven through direct confrontation? The Empress's form undulated with what might have been surprise. You challenge me? A creature of your size against one of mine? I propose a demonstration, Varric said, his tone remaining conversational. If I can, top handle. Someone of your impressive stature, will the Council reconsider humanity's application? Chamber fell silent. The very concept seemed absurd, a 4-foot human challenging a 20-foot apex predator, whose species had never known defeat in single combat. Nixandra's patterns shifted to deep amber, the color of predatory anticipation. You wish to be destroyed so publicly? Very well, I accept your challenge, small one. Perhaps your death will serve as an object lesson for other inferior species who mistake ambition for capability. As the other delegates began making arrangements for the formal combat, Varric remained still, his expression unchanged. He had spent his entire career being underestimated, and he had learned long ago that the most dangerous weapon in any arsenal was the one your enemy never saw coming. The Empress coiled higher, her form radiating confidence and lethal grace. She had no idea what she was about to face. The combat arena materialized around them within minutes. Holographic barriers forming a perfect circle 50 meters in diameter. The council delegates arranged themselves in observation pods that floated, At various heights, their forms casting strange shadows through the translucent walls. Varric stood in the center, a small frame seemingly insignificant against the vast space. Nyxandra entered with fluid grace, her massive coils flowing like liquid mercury across the arena floor. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted 2 war colors deep, crimson and electric blue, that signaled her species' battle readiness. The other delegates leaned forward in anticipation, eager to witness what they assumed would be a brief and decisive demonstration of superior evolution. "The rules are simple," announced the Goliathan delegate, his voice booming across the arena. "Combat continues until one participant yields, or can no longer continue. No external weapons, no technological assistance, pure biological capability." Varric nodded calmly while Nyxandra's massive form began to circle him, her movements hypnotic and predatory. Her species had evolved as ambush hunters on a world where stealth and sudden overwhelming force determined survival. She was built for this kind of confrontation in ways that seemed to make the outcome inevitable. "Last chance to withdraw your challenge, small one," she hissed, her voice carrying across the arena. "My people have never lost a formal combat. Your death will be quick, but it will still be death." "I appreciate the consideration," Varric replied, beginning to move in a slow circle opposite her rotation. "But I'm confident in my chances." The Empress's laugh was like breaking glass. "Confident? You cannot even reach my vulnerable points. I could simply coil around you and end this without effort." The observers murmured agreement. The physics seemed undeniable. Mass, reach, and natural weapons all favored the Empress by overwhelming margins. Even the most generous assessment gave the human no chance of victory. Nyx trunk, Ender struck without warning, her massive head darting forward with speed that would have been impossible for most species to track. Her fangs, each longer than Varric's entire forearm, snapped shut on empty air. The human had moved, not away, as every survival instinct should have demanded, but directly toward the Empress. Sliding beneath her massive form with fluid precision, his hands found purchase on her scales, and before she could react, he had begun to climb. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her massive body contorting as she tried to dislodge him. Varric's response was to continue his ascent, his movements economical and purposeful. His small size, rather than being a disadvantage, allowed him to navigate the spaces between her coils with ease. Every attempt she made to catch him only provided new handholds, new pathways upward. "Stand still and fight." Nyxandra's voice carried frustration now, her earlier confidence beginning to crack. "I am fighting," Varric replied, his breathing still steady despite the exertion. "This is what human combat looks like." The Empress began to thrash more violently, her massive form filling the arena with motion. But Varric seemed to anticipate, every movement using her own momentum to aid his progress. He reached a point along her spine where her scales formed a natural grip, and suddenly his position became secure. "Get off me," she demanded, her voice rising to a shriek. "I'm afraid I can't do that," Varric said, his tone remaining conversational. "You see, this is exactly where I need to be." The delegates watched in growing amazement as the tiny human maintained his position despite the Empress's increasingly desperate attempts to dislodge him. Her superior size and strength, rather than being advantages, seemed to be working against her. "What are you doing to me?" Nyxandra's patterns had shifted to colors. None of the observers had ever seen before confusion mixed with something that might have been panic. Varric's smile was invisible to the audience, but his voice carried clearly across the arena. "I'm proving a point about human warfare, Empress. We don't fight fair, we fight smart." His massive form writhed across the arena floor, her desperate attempts to dislodge Varric growing more frantic with each passing moment. The human remained locked in position along her spine, his small frame pressed against scales that gleamed with nervous perspiration. The delegates watched in fascination as what should have been a brief execution transformed into something entirely unexpected. "This is impossible," the Goliathan delegate rumbled, his massive hands gripping the observation pod's railing. "How can something so small control something so large?" Varric's voice carried clearly across the arena, his tone remaining maddeningly calm. Leverage, physics, and understanding your opponent's weaknesses. Size isn't everything when you know where to apply pressure. The Empress's patterns flashed through rapid color changes, each shift indicating growing desperation. Her species had evolved as solitary hunters, their massive frames designed for overwhelming individual prey through brute force. They had never needed to develop techniques for dealing with opponents who used their own size against them. "Release me and face me properly," she demanded, her voice cracking with strain. "This is proper human combat," Varix replied, adjusting his position slightly. "We don't engage in contests of strength against superior opponents. We find alternative solutions." Nixandra attempted to roll, hoping to crush him beneath her bulk, but Varix shifted with fluid grace, maintaining his position while using her own momentum to improve his grip. His small size allowed him to navigate the spaces between her coils with ease, while her massive form made it impossible for her to bring her natural weapons to bear. "You're cheating," she hissed, her luminescent patterns now cycling through colors that spoke of genuine distress. "I'm adapting," Varix corrected. "Your species rules through intimidation and overwhelming force. Mine survives through ingenuity and exploiting weaknesses." The other delegates began to murmur among themselves, their earlier amusement replaced by growing unease. But they were witnessing challenged fundamental assumptions about power dynamics that had governed galactic politics for millennia. Nixandra's movements became increasingly erratic, her massive form thrashing across the arena with desperate energy, but each motion seemed to work in Varix's favor, allowing him to maintain his position while she exhausted herself against physics that favored smaller, more agile opponents. "I concede. ... double quotes," she gasped, her voice losing its earlier authority. "Can't reach you." "That's the point," Varix said, his breathing still remarkably steady. "You built your entire combat philosophy around being the largest predator in the encounter. You never learned to fight opponents who refused to engage on your terms." The Empress's attempts to coil around herself to trap him failed repeatedly, her massive bulk preventing the precision movements such a maneuver would require. Her natural weapons fangs, crushing coils, toxic secretions were all designed for frontal assault against opponents who would stand their ground, an attempt to match her strength. "This isn't combat," she protested, her voice carrying notes of panic. "This is ... This is ... Effective," Varix finished. "Human warfare isn't about honor or fair play. It's about winning through whatever means necessary." The crystalline Overmind's representative chimed in with harmonics that translated to disbelief. "But where is the glory in such tactics? Where is the demonstration of superior evolution?" Varix's laugh was genuinely amused. "Glory is a luxury for species that can afford it. Humans developed on a world where everything was bigger, stronger, faster, and more deadly than we were. We learned to survive by being smarter, not stronger." Nixandra's movements had slowed considerably, her massive form trembling with exhaustion. I cannot continue this. I cannot fight an opponent I cannot reach." Then perhaps Varix suggested, his tone becoming almost gentle, "You'd like to discuss terms?" The arena fell silent, except for the Empress's labored breathing. The delegates stared in shock as the most feared predator in the galaxy found herself completely neutralized by a creature she could have swallowed whole. The demonstration was proving more effective than Varix had dared hope. The arena had become a theater of the impossible. Nixandra's massive form lay partially coiled across the floor, her exhausted breathing creating visible vapor clouds in the recycled atmosphere. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to colors that her species reserved for submission, deep purples and muted golds that the other delegates recognized with growing alarm. Varix maintained his position with infuriating ease, his small frame somehow dictating the movements of a predator 20 times his size. Every attempt she made to dislodge him only demonstrated the fundamental flaw in her species' approach to combat. "You cannot win this way," she gasped, her voice lacking its earlier authority. "Even if you maintain this position, you cannot defeat me. I am too large, too strong. Defeat you?" Varix sounded genuinely surprised. "Empress, I already have." The delegates stirred uneasily in their observation pods. The Goliathon representative's massive hands had begun to crack the railing. He gripped, while the Hive Queen's drones buzzed in patterns of confusion and concern. "You have not," Nixandra protested, though her voice carried less conviction than before. "I have not yielded. I have not been conquered. Haven't you?" Varrix's tone remained conversational, but his words carried across the arena with devastating clarity. "You can't reach me. You can't remove me. You can't continue fighting without exhausting yourself further. Your entire combat philosophy has been neutralized by an opponent you initially claimed could fit in your palm." The Empress's patterns flashed through rapid cycles of color, each shift betraying her growing desperation. Her species had built their entire galactic reputation on the inevitability of their physical dominance. The concept of being outmaneuvered by a smaller opponent was not merely unexpected, it was existentially threatening. "This proves nothing," she hissed, though her voice cracked with strain. "Your species still lacks the strength for true conquest. You still cannot claim the territories others have taken."
"But can't we?"
Varrix asked, and something in his tone caused the entire assembly to fall silent. "Empress, what do you think I'm doing right now?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Nixandra's movements stilled as the implications began to penetrate her exhausted mind. "I'm not just demonstrating human combat techniques," Varrix continued. "I'm conquering you."
"I'm right here, right now, in front of every major power in the galaxy."
"Your strength, your size, your natural weapons, all of it, is useless against an opponent who refuses to play by your rules." The Empress's patterns shifted to deep red, the color of rage and humiliation. "You dare suggest I'm not suggesting anything?" Varrix interrupted. "I'm stating facts. You challenged humanity's right to stand among apex predators. Accepted. Your challenge and proved that human methods are effective against the most feared species in the galaxy. What does that make us?" The arena fell silent, except for Nixandra's labored breathing. The delegates began to understand what they were witnessing, not just a combat demonstration, but a fundamental shift in the galactic power structure. "You're not defeating me through strength," she protested weakly. "You're using trickery, deception, unfair tactics." "I'm using human tactics," Varrix corrected, "and they're working. It's all that matters in the real universe, Empress. Results." The crystalline overmind's representative chimed in with harmonics that carried undertones of grudging respect. "The small one speaks truth. Effectiveness supersedes methodology in determining survival fitness." Nixandra's massive form shuddered. As the reality of her situation became undeniable, she had been neutralized by a creature she had initially dismissed as insignificant. Worse, she had been neutralized publicly, in front of witnesses who would carry the story across the galaxy. I cannot accept this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You don't have to accept it," Varrix replied gently. "You just have to live with it." The breaking point had arrived, and everyone in the arena knew it. The silence stretched across the arena like a physical weight, broken only by Nixandra's increasingly labored breathing. Her massive form had begun to tremble, not from exertion alone, but from the dawning realization of what was happening to her most fundamental beliefs about power and dominance. "This cannot be real," she whispered, her bioluminescent patterns flickering between colors that spoke of deep confusion. "I am Nixandra, Empress of the Ethereal Dominion. I have conquered 17 star systems. I have never known defeat." "You're experiencing it now," Varrix said, his voice carrying unexpected gentleness. "And there's no shame in it, Empress. We're simply fighting an opponent who doesn't play by the rules you understand." The Goliathan delegate's voice rumbled across the arena like distant thunder. "How is this possible? The human has no size, no natural weapons, no apparent advantages. How can he maintain dominance over a superior opponent?" Varrix shifted slightly, his movement causing Nixandra's massive form to tense reflexively. The key words. Superior. Superior at what? The Empress is superior at frontal assault, at overwhelming force, at intimidation through size. But those advantages become liabilities when facing an opponent who refuses to engage on those terms. "But surely," the Hive Queen's spokesperson buzzed, Pure physical mass must count for something. The Empress could simply crush you through weight alone. Could she? Varix asked. Try it, Empress. Attempt to roll over and crush me. Cassandra. Patterns flashed with desperate hope. She began to shift her massive bulk, attempting to roll onto her back to trap the human beneath her weight. But the movement was slow, telegraphed, and required her to lift portions of her coils that Varix immediately used as leverage to maintain his position. You see, Varix said as she abandoned the attempt, gasping with renewed exhaustion. Size prevents the precise movements such an attack would require. She can't bring her mass to bear without creating opportunities for me to adapt. The delegates watched in growing fascination as their most basic assumptions about warfare were systematically dismantled. The ethereal dominion's representative was being thoroughly outmaneuvered by a creature that should have been prey, not predator. This is not possible, Nixandra repeated, her voice breaking. I have studied every combat form in the galaxy. I have defeated champions from dozens of species. How can someone so small, because being small isn't a weakness, when you know how to use it? Varix interrupted. Your species evolved in environments where size meant survival. Mine evolved in environments where adaptability meant survival. We learned to turn our limitations into advantages. The Empress's patterns began to shift toward colors that the other delegates had never seen before. Deep blues and silvers that spoke of something approaching despair. I cannot fight you. Nothing I do works. Every movement I make only strengthens your position. Now you're beginning to understand, Varix said. Human warfare isn't about matching strength with strength. It's about finding the one angle of attack that your opponent can't counter, then exploiting it completely. But this is not honorable combat, the Goliathan delegate protested. This is effective, Varix finished. Honor is a luxury for species that can afford it. Humans developed on a world where honor got you killed. We learned to survive by any means necessary. The crystalline overmind's representative chimed in with harmonics that carried notes of genuine curiosity. If human combat methods are so effective, why has your species not conquered the galaxy already? Varix's laugh was genuinely amused. Who says we haven't? Empress, tell them about human trade routes. Tell them about human cultural influences. Tell them about human technological integration. Mass's massive form went very still as the implications hit her. You haven't been seeking conquest through force, no, Varix confirmed. We've been conquering through infiltration, through making ourselves indispensable, through being so helpful that removing us would be more costly than accepting us. The arena fell silent as the delegates began to process this revelation. The demonstration was revealing layers of human strategy that none of them had suspected. The revelation hit the assembly like a shockwave through crystalline structures. Nixandra's massive form went completely still as the implications of Varix's words penetrated her exhausted mind. Around the arena, delegates began to shift uncomfortably in their observation pods, their earlier amusement replaced by growing unease. What are you saying? The Goliathan delegate demanded, his voice carrying undertones of suspicion that hadn't been there before. I'm saying, Varix replied, his tone remaining conversational despite the bombshell he was delivering, that while you've all been focused on territorial conquest and displays of strength, humanity has been playing a completely different game. The Empress's patterns flickered through rapid color changes, each shift betraying her racing thoughts. The trade agreements, she whispered, the cultural exchanges, the technological partnerships. Exactly, Varix confirmed. Every species in this chamber has become dependent on human innovations, human logistics, human diplomatic services. We didn't conquer your territories, we made ourselves indispensable to your civilizations. The Hive Queen's representative buzzed with agitation. This is impossible. We maintain complete independence from all external species. We rely on no one, do you? Varix asked. Who designed your atmospheric processors for the outer colonies? Who provided the quantum communication arrays that allow your hive mind to function across interstellar distances? Who created the biocompatibility protocols that allow your species to interact safely with others? The buzzing stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was deafening. Varix continued, his position on Nixandra's spine somehow making him seem larger than his actual size, while you were all competing for dominance through strength. Humans were building the infrastructure that makes modern galactic civilization possible. We became the connective tissue that holds everything together. The crystalline overmind's representative chimed in with harmonics that carried notes of dawning comprehension. The economic integration protocols, standardized communication systems, the universal translation matrices, all human innovations, Varix confirmed. Freely shared, eagerly adopted, completely integrated into every aspect of galactic life. Tell me, how long could your civilizations function if humanity suddenly withdrew all support? The question hung in the air like a weapon. Alexandra's massive form began to tremble as she processed the implications. This cannot be true. We are the apex predators. We are the dominant species. Are you? Varix asked gently. Empress, what happens to your star-spanning empire if the quantum communication networks fail? What happens to your resource extraction? Operations if the atmospheric processors stop working? What happens to your military logistics if the supply chain management systems shut down? Her patterns shifted to colors that spoke of genuine terror. You wouldn't dare. We wouldn't need to, Varix replied. The systems are designed to degrade gracefully if not maintained. They would simply stop working. Only humans know how to maintain them. The Goliathan delegate's massive hands were now completely crushing the railing of his observation pod. This is conquest through deception. This is dishonorable. This is survival, Varix corrected. Your species conquers through strength, but strength can be overcome. Our species conquers through necessity, and necessity is permanent. The delegates began to understand the true scope of what was happening. The combat demonstration was just the surface layer of a much deeper revelation about human strategy and galactic power structures. You made us dependent on you, Nixandra whispered, her voice carrying notes of awe and horror. You made us need you. We made ourselves useful, Varix replied. And usefulness is the only form of power that can't be taken away by force. The arena fell silent as the implications sank in. The tiny human maintaining perfect control over the most feared predator in the galaxy was not just demonstrating combat techniques, he was revealing the true nature of human conquest. So you see, Varix continued, his voice carrying across the arena with quiet authority. The question isn't whether humanity deserves a seat among the apex predators. The question is whether you can afford to refuse this one. The game had changed completely. Everyone knew it. The arena had become a crucible of revelation. Each delegate grappling with the systematic dismantling of their fundamental assumptions about power, dominance, and galactic hierarchy. Nixandra's massive form lay motionless beneath Varix's small frame, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through colors that spoke of deep psychological upheaval. This changes everything, the crystalline overmind's representative chimed, its harmonics carrying undertones of something approaching respect. If human integration is truly so comprehensive, then conventional conquest becomes meaningless. More than meaningless, Varix replied, his position on the Empress's spine, giving his words unexpected authority. It becomes self-destructive. Any species that attempts to eliminate humanity would simultaneously destroy the infrastructure that maintains their own civilization. The Goliathan delegate's voice rumbled with frustrated anger. This is not conquest. This is manipulation. You have deceived us all. Have we? Varix asked. Every innovation we shared was offered freely. Every system we designed was created to mutual benefit. Every partnership we formed was entered into openly. Where was the deception? Xandra's patterns flickered weakly as she found her voice. The deception was in allowing us to believe we remained independent. You made us dependent while maintaining the illusion that we were choosing to work with you. The illusion was yours, Varix replied gently. You chose to see cooperation as weakness, integration as submission. We simply offered solutions to problems you couldn't solve alone. The Hive Queen's representative buzzed with agitation, but this means that humanity has been the dominant species for decades, perhaps centuries. Dominant. Varix considered the word. That's your framework, not ours. We prefer to think of ourselves as indispensable. Dominance implies control through force. Indispensability implies mutual benefit, yet the result is the same, the ethereal dominion's secondary representative. Hist, you control galactic civilization through dependency rather than strength. Control is the wrong word, Varix corrected. We enable galactic civilization to function. There's a difference. The delegates began to understand the true sophistication of human strategy. While they had been competing for territories and resources, humanity had been building the systems that made such competition possible in the first place. "What do you want from us?" Nixandra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is the purpose of this demonstration?" "Recognition," Varix replied simply. "Not of our strength, but of our contribution. We don't seek to dominate other species. Seek to work with them as equals." Equals. The Goliathan delegate's laugh was bitter. "You've just demonstrated that every species in this chamber is dependent on your continued cooperation. How can we be equals when you hold such power over us?" "Because power shared is power multiplied," Varix said. "Every species here has capabilities that humanity lacks. The crystalline overmind's computational abilities, Goliathan's manufacturing capacity, the Empress's transportation networks. We need these things as much as you need ours." The Empress's patterns shifted to colors that spoke of dawning comprehension. "You're not seeking to conquer us. You're seeking to formalize what already exists." "Exactly," Varix confirmed. "We're already partners in everything but name. We're already integrated into every aspect of galactic civilization. We're simply asking for recognition of that reality." The arena fell silent as the delegates processed this revelation. The demonstration had revealed not just human combat capabilities, but human diplomatic sophistication that operated on levels they had never suspected. "If we refuse?" the Hive Queen's representative asked, its buzz carrying undertones of threat. "Then nothing changes," Varix replied. "We continue to provide the services that keep galactic civilization functioning. We continue to innovate and integrate, continue to be indispensable. The only difference is that the relationship remains informal." "And if we accept?" Nixandra asked, her voice carrying notes of exhaustion and resignation. "Then we formalize what already exists," Varix said. "We become partners in name as well as fact. We work together openly, rather than pretending independence that doesn't actually exist." The moment of truth had arrived. The delegates faced a choice that would reshape galactic civilization not through conquest, but through honest acknowledgement of existing reality. The arena had become a theater of political revolution, each delegate wrestling with implications that extended far beyond the original combat demonstration. Nixandra's massive form remained motionless beneath Varix's small frame, her earlier aggression replaced by something approaching contemplative resignation. "You have outmaneuvered us all," she said finally, her bioluminescent patterns shifting. Two colors that spoke of grudging admiration, not through strength, but through strategic thinking that operates on timescales we never considered. "Strategic thinking is humanity's natural weapon," Varix replied. "Other species developed claws, fangs, size, or psychic abilities. We developed the ability to see patterns others miss and plan for consequences others ignore." The Goliathan delegates' voice carried notes of frustrated respect. "How long have you been planning this moment? How long have you been maneuvering toward this revelation?" "Since first contact," Varix admitted. "Every human diplomatic mission, every trade agreement, every technological exchange has been building toward this point. We knew that eventually the question of formal recognition would arise." The crystalline overmind's representative chimed with harmonics that carried undertones of genuine curiosity. "And if we had never challenged your presence, if we had continued to ignore your growing influence?" "Then we would have continued to grow that influence," Varix said simply. "Eventually, the reality would have become impossible to ignore. This demonstration simply accelerated the timeline." The delegates began to understand the true scope of human planning. The combat demonstration was not an improvised response to mockery, it was a carefully orchestrated revelation, designed to force a confrontation that humanity had been preparing for decades. "You used my arrogance against me," Nixandra said, her voice carrying notes of awe and horror. "You knew I would challenge you." You knew I would provide the perfect opportunity to demonstrate your methods. We hoped, Varix corrected. Your Species psychology is well documented. Confrontational, proud, reliant on physical dominance. We calculated that someone of your background would be unable to resist the opportunity to publicly humiliate what appeared to be an inferior opponent. The Empress's patterns flashed through rapid color changes, each shift betraying her growing understanding of how thoroughly she had been outmaneuvered. The entire scenario was designed to showcase human capabilities while minimizing the appearance of aggression. Exactly, Varix confirmed. We needed to demonstrate our effectiveness without appearing to threaten other species. Your challenge provided the perfect framework. The Hive Queen's representative buzzed with agitation. This level of manipulation suggests that human diplomatic relations with all species may be similarly calculated. All diplomacy is calculated, Varix replied. The difference is that most species calculate for immediate advantage. Humans calculate for long-term integration. The arena fell silent as the delegates processed the implications. Every interaction they had ever had with humanity took on new meaning when viewed through the lens of long-term strategic planning. What assurances do we have, the Goliathan delegate asked, that humanity will not use this dependency to exploit other species? It's the same assurance that prevents us from exploiting you now, Varix said. Mutual benefit. Exploitation destroys the foundation of cooperation. We need healthy, prosperous partners, not subjugated vassals. But the potential for exploitation remains, Nixandra pointed out, her voice carrying notes of concern. Your species holds tremendous power over galactic civilization. All power is temporary, Varix replied. Other species will eventually develop their own solutions to the problems we currently solve. Innovation is not monopolizable. Our advantage lies in being first, not in being permanently superior. The delegates began to understand the sophistication of human thinking. They had not simply created dependency, they had created a system that encouraged eventual independence while maintaining cooperative relationships. You're not seeking permanent dominance, the crystalline overmind's representative observed. You're seeking to establish humanity as a permanent partner in galactic civilization. Partnership is sustainable, Varix confirmed. Dominance is temporary. We prefer sustainable relationships to temporary advantages. The arena had become a classroom where the most powerful species in the galaxy were learning about strategy, diplomacy, and the true nature of power from a creature they had initially dismissed as insignificant. The lesson was proving transformative. Arena had become a crucible of transformation. Each delegate forced to confront the collapse of their fundamental assumptions about power, strategy, and galactic hierarchy. Nixandra's massive form lay still beneath Varix's small frame, her bioluminescent patterns cycling through colors that spoke of deep psychological processing. Yield, she said finally, her voice carrying across the arena with quiet dignity. Not to your strength, but to your wisdom. Not to your size, but to your vision. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. The most feared predator in the galaxy had formally acknowledged defeat at the hands of a creature she could have swallowed whole. But more than that, she had acknowledged the superiority of human strategic thinking. Thank you, Empress, Varix replied, his tone carrying genuine respect. Your acknowledgement means more than you know. He dismounted from her spine with fluid grace, his small frame touching the arena floor with barely a sound. Nixandra slowly coiled herself upright, her massive form moving with newfound respect for the human, who had just redefined her understanding of combat and conquest. The Goliathan delegate's voice rumbled across the arena, carrying notes of reluctant admiration. I have witnessed something unprecedented today. A creature of minimal physical capability has defeated our most formidable warrior through methods I did not know existed. The methods exist, Varix said, straightening his uniform. They simply operate on principles that most species haven't needed to develop. When you're large enough to overwhelm your problems, you don't learn to think around them. The crystalline overmind's representative chimed with harmonics that carried undertones of genuine respect. The demonstration has revealed capabilities that transcend physical limitations. Human strategic thinking operates on levels we had not considered. Which brings us to the question at hand, The Hive Queen's representative buzzed. Given what we have witnessed, what is the Council's decision regarding humanity's application for formal recognition? The delegates exchanged glances, their earlier certainty replaced by careful consideration. The combat demonstration had evolved into something far more significant than anyone had anticipated. I propose, Nixandra said, her voice carrying newfound authority, that we acknowledge what has been demonstrated today. Humanity has proven their effectiveness through methods we did not expect, using capabilities we did not recognize. Agreed, the Goliathan delegate rumbled. The small one has shown that size is not the only measure of worthiness. Strategic thinking and long-term planning deserve recognition alongside physical prowess. The crystalline overmind's representative added its harmonics to the growing consensus. The integration of human innovations into galactic civilization speaks to capabilities that transcend traditional measures of species dominance. Varix remained silent, allowing the delegates to process their decision without interference. Had made his demonstration? The rest was up to them. Very well, the Hive Queen's representative announced. By unanimous consent, the Galactic Council recognizes humanity as a qualified species for formal membership among the apex civilizations of the galaxy. The arena erupted in a sound that might have been applause if it had come from human throats. Instead, it was a cacophony of rumbles, chimes, buzzes, and harmonics that spoke to the diverse nature of galactic civilization. Nyx single quotes, Enderet, her massive form moving with newfound grace. You have taught me something today, Small? 1. You have shown me that there are forms of strength I had never imagined. And you have shown me something as well, Empress, Varix replied. You have demonstrated that true strength lies not in never being defeated, but in having the wisdom to recognize when you have been outmaneuvered. The Empress's patterns shifted to colors that spoke of amused respect. I suspect that working with your species will prove educational. For all of us, Varix confirmed, the transformation was complete. Humanity had claimed their place among the apex predators of the galaxy not through conquest, but through recognition of their unique contributions to galactic civilization. 6. Months after the demonstration, the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Council hummed with activity that would have been impossible under the old order. Varix walked among delegates who now treated him as an equal, his small frame no longer a source of amusement, but a reminder of the day everything changed. The integration process had proceeded with remarkable smoothness, largely because the infrastructure for cooperation had already existed. Formal recognition had simply acknowledged what had been reality for decades. The resource allocation protocols you suggested have increased efficiency by 37%. The crystalline overmind's representative reported during the morning briefing. The predictive modeling algorithms have proven particularly valuable. Glad to hear it, Varix replied, reviewing the data streams that flowed across his portable display. The Goliathan manufacturing improvements should be ready for implementation next week. The transformation in council dynamics had been profound. Where once meetings had been dominated by territorial disputes and displays of strength, they now focused on cooperative problem-solving and resource optimization. The change in perspective had unleashed its collaborative potential that none of the species had suspected existed. Nixandra entered the chamber, her massive form moving with the fluid grace that had once been purely predatory, but now served diplomatic purposes. Her bioluminescent patterns had settled into colors that spoke of contentment and intellectual engagement. The transport network modifications are complete, she reported. The new routing systems have reduced transit times by 42% while improving safety margins. Excellent work, Varix said, and meant it. The Empress had proven to be one of the most effective collaborators in the new order, her strategic mind adapting quickly to cooperative rather than competitive thinking. The Goliathan delegate's voice rumbled with satisfaction. The manufacturing integration project has exceeded all projections. Combined human design philosophy with our production capabilities has resulted in innovations neither species could have achieved alone. It was a pattern that had emerged across all aspects of galactic civilization. The formal recognition of humanity had unleashed a wave of cross-species cooperation that was generating benefits no one had anticipated. There is one matter that requires discussion. The Hive Queen's representative buzzed. The Outer Rim territories have requested membership in the Council. They cite humanity's successful integration as precedent. Varix considered the implications. The Outer Rim species were smaller, less technologically advanced, and had been systematically excluded from galactic politics for millennia. Under the old order, they would have been dismissed without consideration. What do they offer? He asked. Unique perspectives, Nixandra replied. Alternative approaches to problems we may not have considered. Fresh thinking, unconstrained by our established methods. Sounds familiar, Varix said with a smile. I seem to recall being dismissed for similar reasons not too long ago. The delegates exchanged glances. Their earlier certainty about superiority and inferiority replaced by more nuanced understanding. The demonstration had proven that valuable contributions could come from unexpected sources. I propose we establish a formal evaluation process. The Crystalline Overmind's representative chimed. Not based on size or strength, but on potential contributions to galactic civilization. Agreed, the Goliathon delegate rumbled. One has taught us that effectiveness transcends physical appearance. The discussion continued, but Varix found his attention drifting to the larger implications. The arena demonstration had been designed to secure humanity's place in the galactic order. But its effects had rippled far beyond that single goal. It had fundamentally altered how the major species thought about power, cooperation, and the nature of strength itself. The Council will now hear proposals for the Outer Rim evaluation protocols, the Hive Queen's representative announced as the formal session began. Varix reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had sought recognition as apex predators, but had instead become something more valuable catalysts for a new form of galactic civilization. Based on cooperation rather than domination, the small human who had once been mocked for his size now sat as an equal among giants, not because he had proven his strength, but because he had proven his worth. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Varix realized, had been the point all along.